Hello, everybody, and welcome to this KFTV talk, sponsored by Lights, Water Stage and Film Studios in Belgium. I'm Chris Evans, the locations editor of KFTV. Today, we've gathered some leading experts to discuss all you need to know about underwater filming, including shooting in open sea or water tanks, and the latest technology. Before we start, a few bits of housekeeping. I will moderate a 30-minute discussion with our panelists before we open it up to questions from you, our live audience. If you have a question, please use the Q&A button in Zoom. My colleague Jackie is helping to moderate today's panel, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. It's also worth noting that this talk will be available to view on our website, kftv.com, and on our YouTube channel from tomorrow. Right, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have Wim Michiels. Wim is a highly experienced underwater cinematographer for feature films and TV series. He's also a creator, or also the creator and owner of Lights Water Stage in Belgium, an advanced interior water stage offering creative possibilities for underwater filming and surface shoots, including multiple water SFX. We also have Katie Marie Goodwright, Managing Director of KMG Management. Katie and the company recommend crew from around the world, matching their skills, experience, and personalities with production requirements. KMGM also works with productions to assist with planning and delivery of underwater shoots. We also have Steve Smithwick with us. Steve is a production designer and owner of Steve Smithwick Scenery Limited, working mainly in TV commercials for the UK and the US. He began his early career as a scenic artist, creating props for films like Star Wars and Alien. We also have Bolívar Sánchez. Bo was born in the USA and raised in the Dominican Republic, where he lives and works currently. He is the Marine and Diving Coordinator at Diving Services and Pinewood, Dominican Republic, working on film and TV projects. Some of his notable works include Caught, The Mummy, and 47 Meters Down. Right, let's get to some questions. First of all, guys, what are some of the most important things and potential issues international producers should know about underwater filming? For example, how much more expensive it can be than above water shooting, the need for more time for prep, and qualified divers and safety experts, etc. Katie, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Yeah, I think especially for people that haven't shot underwater before, the biggest thing is the difference in time and money that you need. It costs a lot more, it takes a lot more. Things are different when you go underwater. And I think production's really understanding that from the people that are doing it is really, really important. But yeah, I would say the big things are the time and the money, and you need more people, there's more safety, and yeah, understanding that is the first thing.
Wim, do you want to come in?
Yeah, so what is the most important thing is the actor's training. In fact, the actor has to perform underwater or on the water. So we can have any technique and any kind of stage and whatever, but if the actor cannot perform it, then you, of course, you don't have anything. So that's very, very, very important. And then prepping. So we have to first to listen to our client from the first moment on, listen to the needs, find creative solutions, and then make them happen. And do what has to be done technically, make things and do it.
And who are the essential crew you need on a film set underwater as well? I mean, obviously qualified divers, safety experts, and all the regular crew, DOPs, etc. Do you usually try and limit numbers, or can you have projects where you have hundreds of people in the water effectively?
Here in our stage, we are here with about 12 to 20, 25 people in the water, something like that, and then a lot of people around. I'm not talking about actors and stunts and extras, of course, but the crew is half of the crew is wet, half of the crew is dry, you can say, I think it's the same numbers than in a normal crew. So you have for each function, each department needs wet and dry crew.
Bo, do you want to come in there? Oh, sorry, go on, Steve. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the same. I mean, in the water, really, you need only people who need to be there. right,
Yeah.
in the water. So there's always lots of people who want to get in. But what you really need are technicians who do their normal job, who get in, and then dry people to really feed them. So I think it's almost more people than on a dry shoot, because you do have to double up. And if I've got somebody in the water, I always have to have somebody. I can't have them getting out of the water to get something. It needs to be, fed to them all the time. And I think all departments are like that. You have to be a diver, but you have to be a good technician. And that's, a lot of people think you just have to be a diver, but you have to be good at doing something,
Bo, do you want to come in there? Because obviously, you coordinate a lot of projects, and I know you're busy at the moment. So what are some of the key issues you face, and sort of how big are your crew usually when you work with them?
So we start obviously with cast and safety. So we assign one dive instructor or dive master to a cast member, and we try to keep it that way so they can create a bond of communication and safety throughout the project. And the other aspect is it's super different when we're at the water tank doing surface work and when we're doing underwater work. It changes a lot the dynamic, because what happens usually is that a lot of the crew is not a diver. So you can get in the water and work from the water if you're not a diver, unless it's surface work or a little bit of breath holding. We only allow scuba divers, certified scuba divers, to go under. So when the job moves underwater, a lot of the departments rely on the scuba diving team, which I run here, to assist in some of the jobs. But what I have to say is that you all know that in the Dominican Republic is a growing industry. And in the last few years, we've gotten a lot of technicians certified. So right now, they're super independent. The way we work is that every department now have their divers. I just have to provide scuba tanks, and of course, everybody's overseen by the diving and water safety team. And we have to control who's in the water and have a logbook and keep track of the times, which is important for underwater people breathing under pressure. But yeah, it's, and the problem of a lot of people wanting to get in the water, it's always going to be there, especially in the heat of the Dominican Republic.
Yeah. And how does the prep and process differ depending on if you're in the tank or if you're shooting in open water? So.
Well, everything goes through the layer of safety first. Is what's impossible, what's possible, what's hard to do, but we can achieve it with planning. A lot of rehearsing time is something that we need always. We need for producers to understand that when we ask for days or weeks of rehearsing, it's just because we need to take this we have to break a sequence into tiny steps. And to me, the most important question that I ask is not what do you want to shoot, it's how do you want to shoot this? So we can go over the process of the logistics of where's everybody gonna be, because I need to have a complete understanding of where each element is going to be at all times. So that's really important. How do you want to shoot it?
So does it depend on the size and type of project as to what the requirements are and how big the crew needs to be, etc.?
Absolutely.
And do you find the same, Wim? Like obviously when you have projects shooting at the tanks, they must vary in size and requirements, and how do you sort of adapt to each?
I follow Bo completely. What Bo says is really the key issues. And we have to communicate with productions before to tell them all that. So that's our first job that we always have to do. Explain the difficulties and explain that it's going to take a longer prep time, and that we shoot slower than a normal shoot. and explain all these safety issues. It's very, very important.
And Katie, do you want to come in there? Obviously, when you're speaking to producers who are looking to sort of create various different, size and quality projects, how does your process or your suggestions differ?
I think I come at this from a bit of a different angle because I work sort of primarily across natural history. It's what these guys are saying is probably a lot more relevant to the sort of more, I don't know, stuff that the viewers are probably usually doing. So I probably don't have that much more useful input because the stuff that I do is quite different. So the crews are normally very small, and I probably don't have too much more to add there. Sorry.
No, I'm just curious to know what are some of the common requirements though when they come to you initially? What are their sort of thoughts and what are their plans, and how do you sort of advise accordingly?
So it's different. So with natural history, the people I'm working with, they normally know quite a lot about what they're doing, and I'm just there to sort of add to that. So a lot of that input normally comes from the camera people because they've normally chosen them to shoot that animal because it's something they've done before, and that's something that they know the most about. So it's more about finding the right people to do the job and listening to the people who are on the ground doing it. Not so much for a natural history shoot, but I would advise too much there.
Okay. And Steve, how do you sort of prepare differently for a water tank shoot as opposed to an open water shoot?
For me, I mean, they are so different because a water tank is obviously the best way to do things because it wins on everything. You've got safety, you've got predictability, convenience. You can be in and out in a day. If you're on a boat, it's like being at sea or being a sailor. You have to have everything with you. So you only have what you've got. And it makes working, you have to be a problem solver and be able to deal with what happens on the boat. It's that you can't wait for a man from LA or London to turn up with an extra piece. Everything needs to be done there. So if you're on a boat, I have to do so much more planning, and I have to have so much more thought about backups and alternatives. And then you've got the weather. So that's always a thing. And what years ago, producers used to have a thing called weather insurance, and so that meant that producers could play that, and they'd have a few days and they'd be able to spread a shoot over a few days. Whereas now you have to specify how many days shoot you're doing and what days. And if you've got, 3 days and those days the sea is or the visibility is gone, it's quite difficult. I think you need a much longer prep and a much more forgiving schedule. You can predict things in a tank and control, and there's still things that go wrong because you're in water, but on a boat or even on a boat, on a beach, anywhere, you're depending on the weather. You've got, and
the clarity of the water as well. I mean, I'm assuming, if you're filming in nice clear water, it's a lot easier. How deep can you go before it affects the light quality and that kind of thing?
For a lot of jobs, it's like, for some jobs, especially in feature films, you almost don't want clarity because you want it to look dangerous. You want it to look, but for some of the commercials I did, we almost wanted the sea to be like a tank. So we'd be looking for really crystal clear water in the best places. So that was because we also had artists underwater and we had things like that. We'd be looking for places where the water was warm temperature, where you have plenty of light. We'd probably shoot only in the top sort of 5 to 10 meters. We'd never go deeper than that. You know, it's got to be light. It doesn't, if you want it clear and crystal, and it's not something a lot of people do now, because I think you can again control and filter in a tank, and unless you're in the sea because you're also filming the horizon and you're filming a shoreline, or you've got a particular piece of coral or a wreck, you know, I think you're better in a tank.
And Bo, do you mostly film in the tank out in the Dominican Republic, or is it a mixture of that and open water?
I'm
sorry.
I'm thrilled with sort of seeing Wim's tank and the Dominican Republic tank, because I've worked in the Pinewood tank in the UK and other tanks, but not. I mean, your tank in the Dominican Republic is probably about 5 years old, 6 years old.
Yeah, Bo, do you want to come in there? Yeah, in terms of like the films that shoot at the tanks and how that works.
Yeah, sure. We do a mixture of the two. So what I propose to a lot of productions is like we go out on the ocean to just to get our masters and to get a sense of that hugeness or vastness of the ocean, if that's the case for the film. And then we move everything back to the water tank. Our water tank, it's super cool in a sense because our tank is a horizon water tank. So you can do a lot of over water shots and underwater shots, because the visibility here in our tank is spectacular because of our water source. So what we end up doing is we end up murking the water a little bit to just to blend in the fabrics and the all the elements that we put in the background, so it looks like the real ocean.
And Wim, what about your facilities? Can you tell me a bit about those and you know, projects that were shot there recently and the platforms that you can offer for projects?
Yeah, so we're also specialized in both underwater and surface shooting. I think we're the only interior tank that has the possibility to do surface with all the effects. That means big waves, dump tanks, all the water effects on top of it. And also we can go up to 11 meters of depth. So that gives us large possibilities. Behind me, you see a skylight. That's half of the skylight that we have. So and there's a chimera box underneath it. It's not on there now, but then you have a seamless sky. So you have the impression that you're really outside. And the big difference is the fully controllable. That's what we can offer. So we don't depend on the weather conditions. A night shoot can be in daytime here. And it's of course warm water, 32 degrees, and fully controllable in any kind of situation. So that's a bit what we made the tank for. So and again, people go outside in the real ocean for their master shots, for their large ones with a ship, and then they build a piece of the set here to do the close-ups or the closer shots. So we have a large platform, horizontal platform that can take 20 tons of sets, and we can dry build it and then submerge it to a depth of 8 meters or more. And we can also submerge it with the people in the sets, because it's a very safe system with security features. And we also have a movable platform that can tilt 50 degrees, so we can build a set on it and then tilt 50 degrees and sink it down. So like a real ship going down, that can be 18 meters by 12 meters, for example. And so there's a lot of ballast tanks underneath such a platform, and we can control it. So we can lift 40 tons of set only with air, and then have 25 tons of craning power to just hold the platform. So it's all things that we develop further and further every time that there's big projects. We invent some new things for them, and that's what keeps the job nice for us. That we also can offer more and more possibilities to the industry.
Fantastic. And I'm curious to know, how much do you have to sort of steer filmmakers on choosing filming locations and obviously then the shoot itself? And do you ever receive any sort of difficult requests from producers where you have to sort of, work a little bit creatively, perhaps? Steve, do you want to kick us off on that one?
I think always you have to, steer them and work a bit creatively. I was talking to somebody this year about they wanted to do a recreation of a mine rescue. They wanted a whole tunnel flooded, but they kept insisting that they wanted, 30 meters at once with 40 people in. They didn't want to break it up. And so, it just became such an expensive thing. I was going to have to build a purpose-built tank, but I think it's being rewritten at the moment. It's for me, I have to be practical and do what I can. We can do amazing things, but you have to be realistic. I mean, like they said, going out and shooting the master shot at sea, and then you'll shoot a cave or you'll shoot something which can be in the tank, and then it's like normal filmmaking. We do that in the dry all the time anyway. So.
And Bo, do you want to? Sorry, go on, Steve. Do you want to finish? Bo, do you want to come in there in terms of, sort of steering filmmakers?
Yeah, especially because when people come over to the DR, they rely on our knowledge of the different beaches and the different aspects of the oceans. The Dominican Republic has the Caribbean Ocean on one side and has the Atlantic Ocean on the other side. And those two bodies of water are conducive to do different stuff on them. And they have a different look and they have a different watercolor and visibility. So that's something that we navigate. Also with, landlocked bodies of water. We have a lot of underwater caves here. So we also do some work on those. And the difficult request is, it's part of the day-to-day job, is running boats on that draft 4 feet, and they want to get it. They give us a beach of 3.5 feet. So we're dragging props the whole day. We're changing props. We're breaking boats. Right now, I have a request to put a bigger boat on a beach that has 1.5 feet of water, and I mean, it's that kind of stuff that you have to navigate and be always polite. And your explanation of no, it just doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. So yes, and that breaking up of the sequence that I mentioned at the beginning, I've had requests to do super long caves. I'm like, you're not going to shoot more than 7-8 feet of travel, and then we go up, and then we do another tunnel, and then we go backwards on the tunnel. It looks like a completely different tunnel. So it's just having creative inputs into how they can break it up and make them understand that the same way the shots are designed of a few seconds each, it's how we should play it in real life and have all the safety hatches, all the escape routes, and all of that.
And so extending from that, Katie, do you have to sort of rein in expectations sometimes, or get them to really consider the budget, restraints as well?
Yeah, so I like, for the sort of shoots that aren't natural history that I might help with, will be a lot smaller budget than what these guys are used to working with, and where it's people that haven't ever done anything underwater before, it's understanding what they want to achieve with the time frame and the money that they have, and sort of advising them that if you want to do something, that top side might take this amount of time, but if you want to do something like that underwater, it takes a lot longer, which costs a lot more. So it's understanding what they want to do. Like if they wanted it to be in open water, but actually with what they have, they can achieve the same sort of shot, but in a tank, and just kind of giving a little sort of bit of input there. But again, it just sort of, for the sort of things that I might work on, it comes back down to what they're trying to do with the budget and the time they have, and working out the best way that might happen. And sometimes it can't happen because they can't afford to get what they need, and they need to look at doing something else. Yeah.
A lot of considerations, yeah. And what about some of the latest equipment and technology? I mean, how have they sort of developed over the last sort of 10, 15, 20 years or so? How have things changed, and what are the new housings like? And do you have to adapt cameras and equipment depending on the project and the requirements? Perhaps, Steve, do you want to kick off there?
I think it's more a sort of whim question, but I mean, I can remember when I started, my first job, whenever I got to a place, was to build an A-frame or a davit to get the camera into the water, because they were so big with so much weight on them. You know, it was just lowering them, getting them in and out of the water, because in those days with film, they had to come out and be loaded. You know, so nowadays it looks a lot more civilized, but like I say, I'm not really a camera person, so.
Bo, do you want to come in there? Because I mean, obviously the cameras have got a lot smaller, and you can have iPad cameras now. You've got underwater motion caption filming, like on Avatar. You've got robot cameras. You've got all sorts of different devices and ways of shooting, haven't you now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. What cameras? That depends on what they want to use. But usually housings have gotten a little bit smaller, more manageable. Also, prosumer and pro cameras have gotten so great that we just shot a feature and we used prosumer level cameras for the underwater parts. Super small housings, super manageable, because they needed a lot of fast swimmings and sharp POVs. So we attached the cameras to a bunch of underwater scooters, and you can really go fast on that type of scooter. I love the lights. I love the new lights. The color they emit, because I'm in love with the camera side of things. I don't really do it, but I enjoy seeing all the novelties and all the new things that are coming out.
And testing them out. And Wim, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, we always try to begin with cinema cameras. So that means at this moment, ARRI Mini LF and Sony Venice are the two top cameras that are used. The housings are a bit bigger, but they're fully controllable. So that is a good way to start. And then, of course, we need smaller cameras for the very fast work, or when it's very small, or when we have a car shoot and the actor takes the last bubble of air. You need a small camera to capture that. So we have 10 housings here for each camera system, but we always try. I always try to begin with the best quality, with files that are raw or non-compressed, and go from there. And then when it's needed, we go down to the smaller cameras and all these possibilities.
And also within the studios, you've got a lot of amazing new equipment as well, haven't you? I mean, I know there's sort of talk and thoughts about virtual water stages, for example, which could be a fantastic and fascinating way of shooting films and TV series.
We've had several requests for VR studios with water, so adding a LED wall behind a water surface, and we're thinking about it, and it's a very difficult one, but an expensive one, but it's of course it brings so much. It brings a new world to the water shooting. And I think that someday we will realize that dream and make it, and have it.
Fantastic. I'm conscious a lot of questions are coming through from the audience, so I'm going to address a few of those, guys. So there's one here from Max Wertendijk, who says, what is the average length of time, requirements and cost for appropriate actor training for underwater shoots? Bo, do you want to come in there?
I mean, I'm sorry to almost every answer is it depends. It depends on the sequence that we want to achieve. But we do have programs here in Diving Services DR of the way we go about. And in a nutshell, what we tend to do is that we, with our instructors, we give the actors first, let's say the confined water course, like you were going to get certified, but you don't go out to the ocean. So we do that, and we take them through the paces of mask, reg, how to read air, how to buoyancy, and all of that. And immediately we go kind of into the sequence that they're training, they're acting for. And our goal is to achieve that the actors act. I've gotten divers and got them to trying to act, and actors are there for a reason. Actors should learn how to dive so they can do their job, because it looks way much better. And so that's what we do, the confined water class, and then we start working towards the scene and working towards the sequence.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to come in there in terms of addressing how to handle actors? Wim?
Yeah, it depends very much on the person as well. So we have kind of the same system as Bo described, but there's water people and there's people that don't feel anything for water. So when you have people that are really water people, you can have an actor coming in and beginning from scratch, and after 2 sessions of 2-3 hours, he's ready to do the job, simple job. In other cases, we had a film with cave divers, and the 4 actors had to learn to cave dive. So it was a process of 5 months to get there, because they had to start from scratch and then go to scuba and be dry suit and rebreather and full face mask, and so all the difficult things. So it was a very long process, but we achieved it, and it is possible. It's almost possible every time. Sometimes there are medical limitations, people that are not aware that they cannot learn to dive, but in most cases we're getting there, and it is the most important thing of underwater filming. So so we keep on training until they're ready to do the job.
Fantastic. Anyone else want to come in before I go to the next question?
Well, I mean, what is amazing is the way the actors really get to trust and really trust their safety divers. Usually, you know, when we were working, it's usually 2 guys, so they swim from one to the other, and they hung out with them at the end of the day, and they really built up a relationship. And even with children, it was very important to have that really good relationship, because they really do have to trust them. They have to say, you know, I'm going to take the air away and your mask, and you'll be fine. And you know, sometimes it's amazing. They're really good.
What I find more interesting of that is the reason why the reason why we assign people and they have to do the whole job with that actor is also because the diver learns their body language, and they already know when they're going to when they're going to ask the air without knowing. So sometimes the way we set it up is that we have outside monitors like CCTV, and I can also see through the camera, and I have my microphone with my underwater speakers, and I also start to see the body language. And when I'm about to say go in, the diver is already in frame taking care of his actor. So that relationship is super important.
Fantastic. Okay. There's another question here from Mohammed Ashraf, who asks, how are underwater sequences actually executed in practice? He's keen to sort of work on a project doing some underwater scenes, just wants to know what the process is and what he needs to factor in and consider. Bo, do you want to kick us off there?
Get professionals to handle the water work.
Yeah.
Befriend them if you don't have the budget or whatever it takes. Use people that work in the industry, because normal scuba divers out there, like instructors for school, they have a different way to go about things, and we do it completely differently. So get professionals to work with you.
Steve?
I absolutely agree with Bo. I mean, it's something that people love the idea of, and especially if they've done a diving holiday or something, but it is very, very difficult. There's so many things, you know, try and get somebody to help. So
also I want to add,
yeah, go.
This can be 4 inches above below the surface, or this could be 100 meters below the surface. So if you want to do complicated stuff, take it small and start shallow.
Good advice. Extending from that, we've got a question here from Spencer Friend asking, what kind of prep and build time would you expect for designing and building medium-sized sets that are in an underwater stage? Wim, do you want to start with that one maybe? Because I know you've worked recently on Estonia, for example, which is, you know, a big TV series, but it's sort of multi-European co-production. What sort of planning and build time do you have to expect?
Medium big sets we can assemble here in about 5 days. So we have a wood shop, special place of 1,000 square meters just next to the water stage. People start a few weeks or months even before to prep their sets, and when they're almost ready, bring them in, and then it needs about 1 week to build it. Sometimes we make they assemble a set on 2-3 days even. So it takes 4 days, 1 day to get a set out and 2 days to get it back in, and then have 1 day to test things and to finalize the sets, and we can shoot again. So but of course that it's a specialized thing done by specialists. The same as for the other divers, also the people that come in with sets, and they have to know what materials they can use, which paints they can use, and then they have to be supported by us, by all the techniques there. We have cranes, we have fixation points, rigging points on the platforms, divers that help them, etc., etc. So it has to be a very fluent thing, of course. Otherwise, you don't get that short building times.
I have a message for set builders. Wood floats a lot. Yes, it floats a lot.
We have a solution with our platforms, because most of the things are built in wood, and a mix of wood and metal and plastics, etc. But we can make the platform heavier. So you can, if it's fixed well, then we can just release air and have it down. So that's the way it helps, and it also reduces the costs to build things, because you can use wood. And of course, 1 cubic meter of pine wood has a weight of 560 kilos above water, and has a lift of 440 kilos below water, something like that. So it's a very, very big difference.
Steve, you want to add?
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's quite a difficult calculation, because I've built whole house interiors, or, you know, all kinds of temples and things. And what I tend to do is I build and construct things dry as much as possible, with the idea that they're going in the water. And then like you said, I assemble them. So it's very quick. Once they go in the water, what costs production a lot is the rental of the tank. You know, so obviously, you know, I can't spend 3 weeks putting something in. They want me to put it in usually in a day or 2 days or 3 days. And then you have to light it and tidy everything up. But I build things and then put them in the water. And then I have riggers, diving riggers, and usually use the riggers from the tank as well. Because if I'm working in Pinewood, you know, the boys there are really good. And it's just assembling and locking it down. And then afterwards, I'll have my art department go in and they will do all the sort of dressing and adding weights to fabrics, doing stuff. There's so much weights and bits. But one of the problems is wood. I mean, because there's not enough underwater work to have a specific underwater construction company. So you're always using carpenters and painters from the normal film business. So I've in the past, I've used a poly foam, which comes in about 20 mil, which is used for sign writing. And that's really good. And I've had that on aluminium frames. But then you have to be careful because aluminium in the water, I think it oxidizes. So you get masses of these little bubbles, which then add to disturb the visibility. So it's always a compromise. And, you know, quite often I just end up using marine ply on a metal frame and sealing everything as much as possible and fixing it down. And it's use a lot of scaffolding, a lot of it's weight, and like Bo said, everything floats. I mean, I've done a job where I was building a stone temple on the seabed, and just for some extra bits, we bought a load of concrete blocks, which were just going to go in the background, and we threw them out the boat and they floated, you know, and they were sort of air bricks. So they're really heavy to carry, but, you know, materials in water, you have to find stuff that works and use it again. But you make a lot of mistakes on the way.
Yeah, I was going to say experiment and then see. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's another question here saying how many pages or days are generally doable in the water? It says ballpark. Bo? Excuse me.
I've done 7 pages in one day, and I've done 2 8s in one day. I mean, what are they? Storm sequences? There's dialogue. I mean, we have to take it case by case.
Yeah.
There's not a real answer to that on my side of things, at least.
No, it depends on the project and requirements. Yeah.
The amount of shots took over the scene.
Yeah.
All of that.
The budget, etc. Yeah, there's a lot of factors to consider, aren't there? There's another straightforward question, which I'm hoping one of you can answer, and that is, what is the current protocol for how many water safety personnel need to be allocated per actor while working in the water? For instance, I think it used to be 1 water safety person to every 2 actors while in the water. Is that still the case? Bo, is that one you can address?
I mean, it depends. We tend to do 1 per person, but that depends. If the person's going from point A to point B, that immediately becomes 2 people for 1 person.
Right.
And obviously we have people on the surface in case that person bails out. We have someone to catch them at the surface. It's the same in the surface as well, from point A. So we're always thinking in terms of where do we start, where do we end, and that's how we designed the safety scenario.
Right. Wim, and thoughts? Yeah, go.
Minimum 1 safety diver per person in the water, because who are you going to save if you have to choose between 2 people? If the safety diver, if both people get in danger, who are you going to save? So you need for every person, minimum one safety diver, and then it depends on the difficulty. And if we have all the dump tanks, etc., and there's a lot of current in the water, and so we have to have more people for safety.
Okay, great.
Also, not
Go
only
by.
point by point, let's say we have a boat capsizing with a dump tank hitting it. We also have a safety diver below watching at everything all at once, apart from the people that are assigned to them. So that person, because our effects don't create a lot of chaos way underneath. So if somebody's like 15 feet underwater or 5 meters, it's going to have a clear view of what's going on at the surface, and that person can act right away.
Fantastic. Okay. There's another question here saying, are producers aware of the minimum qualifications required for divers operating in the UK? And what are the qualifications required elsewhere? So in Belgium or Dominican Republic or other countries? Who wants to kick that one off first?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Wim.
We followed the HSE, so the British system, and they have in the HSE there's a legislation for filming underwater, and that's important. And in Belgium we don't have those rules, so we cannot follow them. So all the technical divers, all the technical crew has to get his ticket in UK and get a HSE scuba license. That's very important. So you become a professional diver. So you have first your experience in film, be a good diver, sport diver, and then go for your professional license and then come diving. So also a lot of people ask us, yeah, I'm a dive master, PADI or whatever, and I want to go to work with you. It's impossible. So that's not what we want. So everybody has to talk the same safety language and has to know that everybody in the water knows the same thing, and is able to react also when something's happening.
Brilliant. Okay.
The same as in Belgium. The same as in Belgium. We don't have a legislation in the Dominican Republic, but we were lucky enough to go and through Pinewood, Dominican Republic, we train and learned this trade in Pinewood, UK, at Diving Services UK. So we use the HSC legislation, just, but we probably don't have the same, it's not easy to travel from here to the UK to get your ticket. So we have it set up in a way that those dive masters and those instructors, they need to come in and we need to train them through for what we need to do. But we use basically the HSC guidelines as well.
Okay, and so there's a question here extending exactly from that, from Sergio Casari, is asking you specifically, Bo, do you need special visas to work in the Dominican Republic, and what diving certification do they recognize and what regulations do they work under? As in the UK, we need HSC diving certification because of the health and safety protocols. So basically you've answered part of that question, but do you want to talk a bit about, like, in terms of entering the Dominican Republic and shooting there, the requirements?
I'm not so good at answering this question. I'm going to say that there's a lot of crew that comes here and they're able to work. You can come and work for a certain period of time, and after that, then you have to get your papers in order. I'm going to say it's from 3 to 6 months because that's the length of most of the productions that come through here. But there's not a special visa for you to come, and you either have to be, as I said, a dive master, a dive instructor, proof of dives that you have, probably a letter of recommendation from your instructor trainer, and we can take it from there.
Brilliant. There's a more broader question here from Max Vitendijk. Katie, perhaps if you could help with this one. When is it too early to start reaching out to talk about underwater tank shooting? What do you need producers to already know before you can have a useful conversation? Like, how much knowledge should they have before they even consider an underwater shoot?
I guess they obviously need to know what they're trying to do and how much money they've got, because that is going to dictate most of it. And I don't think it's ever too early, because if people come into it too late and they realise how much is involved, and if they didn't know that before, then it's problematic. So I don't think it's ever too early to find out about doing things underwater. But I think you really need to know really what you're trying to achieve and how much money you have to do that. And I think that they're the main things that you need to know, really, like before you start talking to people. Because I've had conversations with people and I can't really have a useful conversation because they haven't thought about it enough. So I think those are the main things, really. But it's always worth sometimes it's a few conversations to give people a bit of an idea, and then they go away and come back to you, and you kind of build it up together. But yeah, I think knowing all the times, the budgets, and really the shots that you're trying to get, basically.
And anyone else want to come in there before I go on to the next question?
Yeah,
Go with.
Yeah, it's important to contact us or somebody who's involved in your shooting, or you think to work with him as soon as possible. So that means during the script writing even. I read a lot of scripts, and then in a lot of cases they have to simplify things to get it done budget wise. And some people contact us during their script writing, and that's a good idea. It's a lot of work for us, but it's the best way to have it to match your budget to what you're writing.
Fantastic. There's a good question here. How do you manage the risks associated with hazardous marine life when shooting in open water? It's a good question, Steve.
I think most divers realize. Sorry.
No,
Katie,
you go, Steve. You go.
Most divers realize that marine life isn't that hazardous, and the hazardous marine life that there is, you've just got to respect. And it's wherever. I mean, if there are places where you've just got to be really careful. I mean, you can be in the Bahamas in 6 foot of water, and it can be full of lemon sharks. So you've got to have somebody just to keep an eye out. But most of the time, marine life just wants to keep out of your way. You're out looking for it. So. I mean, I'm sure that Katie's got people who spend weeks looking for sharks. They're quite hard to find sometimes.
Katie?
I was just going to say, just working with experts who, if you're working with marine life, working with experts who regularly work with them or have filmed with them before, that know what they're doing. So like for me, working in natural history, obviously that's a given. People work with scientists. But in terms of if it's not natural history, it's just working with people who and getting advice from people that know about those animals or have shot in those places before. And yeah, especially with marine life, people that are experts in those fields to advise you.
Brilliant. Wim, there's a good question here for you. Can you talk about filming underwater tank SFX and what that process actually looks like in practice?
Depending on the idea, what people want to shoot. So we first listen to in most cases it's a producer and director coming and telling their story before we have read the script, and then we listen and see what has to be done. So and that can vary very yeah, it's a wide variation. So for example, for Estonia, a sinking ship, it was obvious that we needed a tilting platform, and then I said, yeah, okay, that is possible, we will build it. And then you make it, and then you have the interior of the ship, and water has to rush in, so that we have the pumps and we have the hoses to get the water into the interiors, and then you have to make installations that fit the interiors, so you can flood water where you want it. So every time it's first listen, see what is needed, and then have the right people and have the right equipment.
Fantastic. That's a good question here. So go on, Wim.
safe, and do it safe. That's
Yeah, no, absolutely. Good question here from John Doherty, who asks, what is the panel's view on safety boats on open water? He says, I often request a safety boat, but it turns out to be a camera boat or a crew boat. Steve or Bo, do you want to? Yeah, Bo, you want to say something there?
A safety boat will be and always has to be a safety boat. A safety boat can't double as a camera boat. So you have to have that very clear going on because that's part of the prep. You have to do a diagram and you have to assign the boats, you have to assign the people, because it has happened more than once that then all of a sudden the safety boat is more conducive to the shot that they have to do. It's like, we should have discussed this earlier. I'm not going to switch out in the middle of the ocean, get two crews, and because our safety boats are designed for safety. And that's completely non-negotiable for me.
Okay, brilliant. There's another, well, quite a few more questions. Wim, we touched earlier on the virtual production stages. This person, Linda Reese, is asking, how do they actually work? You know, the volume wall tech, how does it work?
I didn't see a interior stage with a LED wall yet, but I have an idea about doing it. So we have done a production where we build a wall in our tank, and we had a photo behind it of 60 meters wide, 10 meters high. So the same, and then the waves were going over the wall and being pumped back into the wet part, and the photo was dry. So that was for us a good start to start thinking about LEDs, the use of LEDs. But there's a lot more that has to be solved to use these LEDs, because when we make storm at sea, the humidity is going up to 100% in the water stage. So so electronics don't like that too much. So but we think we have solutions. It's only the budget to make it and to buy these very expensive LEDs that have to be purpose made, and to keep them dry, and to have this big storm in front of your LEDs. It's a very, very difficult thing. So
Okay.
I cannot answer the question yet, because it doesn't exist yet.
But yeah, but you have an idea of how it will work. Okay, great. And then, in fact, another question for you, Wim, just quickly, that do your studios have the ability to shoot a set dry and then move it to the tank to shoot the same set wet? I think you do, don't you?
Yes, we can have the set dry, shoot completely dry, and then have it submerged while we're shooting. So you can even see the water rising and people getting wet, and after that maybe drowning, and having the set completely submerged visually, because all the actors, all the extras and stunts, they can always reach the surface at all time. It's very important for safety, but visually you can create it that you have a closed set and with people trapped in it and going under, so you can start dry and then finish completely wet underwater at 8 meters of depth.
Brilliant. There's a question here from Joe Griffiths is asking, I've just completed my HSC Scuba Part 4 and want to become an underwater camera operator. How would you recommend getting into the industry? So it's obviously someone trying to start out. Any suggestions? Put your hand up if you have any thoughts, perhaps. Bo, do you want to come in there? Quite a niche question.
Yeah, it is. I'm going to say assist and get in the water and shoot a lot, even for yourself. It used to happen a lot, but doesn't happen a lot anymore since the level of the DR has gone up. So, but we've gotten people that used to work in the camera department but weren't really good divers, so that would create a problem. So practice, be in the water as much as you can, assist for someone.
Brilliant.
There's
another, yeah, go on, Wim.
And keep on going, keep on doing it, and keep on trying what you have to achieve.
Another quick niche question here. How do you approach, from Robert Barrett, how do you approach simulating an ice surface on the water, filmed from both below and above the surface? Has anyone actually done that? They can sort of perhaps make some suggestions. If you haven't, don't worry. Yes, go Steve.
I've actually done it with plastic but also with wax, and it takes a lot of wax. And the reason I used the wax was because we had to have somebody break the surface, and it worked really well. But
Okay.
I think if I had more money, I'd have done it with a plastic. And done it. But wax is brilliant because it floats, and you can just melt it and then pour it on the water, and it forms up just like ice. But if you were doing a sort of Arctic thing, you'd want a complete build because it's much thicker. Yeah.
Okay. Final thoughts in terms of where you see sort of the underwater filming sector heading. What are some of the issues you think you're facing at the moment? How will they be addressed? Wim, do you want to start?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
It's just where you see the underwater filming sector sort of heading in the coming months and years, how you think things will change, perhaps new technology, ways of working, etc.
Correct. New things will come up, and we will, from our side, we will keep on developing things, and it always starts with the ideas of what is needed from the creatives and from producers and directors and DPs. And for example, I have now for the next shoot a very complex camera movement, so we have to think about how we do that. Is that a crane? Is that a scooter? What is the part of swimming, and how we're gonna pilot the scooter to be able to do that movement? But it can be a very small camera that has to be remote controlled, or it's every time every shoot gives a new challenge, and it will, I think, will keep on going, and in all the directions and for all the departments that are involved, it will be challenge every time to make new things and go further.
Brilliant. Steve?
I just think technology has improved so much, for cameras, and actual filming is moving on leaps and bounds. But from my point of view, building things, it's still just the same. But I think less and less will be built because there'll be more. Eventually, they'll have LED walls, and they'll have more things. There'll always be close-up stuff built, but, for artists to interact with. But I think as the virtual moves on, I mean, if you're outside in the street, you look up and they have LED screens in all weather. So it won't be long before that will become slightly more, waterproof and be usable. But I just think there's going to be much more tank work rather than working in the sea, apart from master shots and things. It's becoming, people are more conscious of safety now than they used to be, and it's a much better place to work. It's a much better way of working.
Okay, brilliant. Katie?
Just like what Wim was saying with the technology and how that changes, and it changes what you can do, and it moves so fast. Like I think when you were saying you've got like 10 cameras with 10 different housings, whereas now you can get I think Gates have a housing that you can actually fit most of the cameras in, so you can, rather than having to have all of these housings, you can fit a lot of them into one. So it's just, the technology is the fastest changing thing, I think.
Brilliant. And Bo, the final word?
Yeah, I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited. Really excited for all of the technology that we use. But I think at the end of the day, the crew and the human resources are what makes this so special. And what's going on right now in the DR, being pushed by local companies and the film commission and all of that. It's super exciting to see every time a production comes through here, the ton of knowledge that gets left behind is amazing. And I'm just very excited for that.
Brilliant. Thank you so much to you guys, our speakers. You've been great. Thanks to our sponsor, Light Studios, and thank you to you guys for watching. I hope it's been useful and interesting for you. Thanks very much.
Nice to meet you all, guys.
Bye. Likewise.
Thanks, guys.